This week, Microsoft releases an optional preview of new experiences for Windows 11 that's due to reach general availability in March, and it includes support for Android apps. There's a big update for insiders on the dev channel with tons of new features, including taskbar drag and drop support and start menu app folders. And Google takes aim at old PCs with Chrome OS Flex, a free version of Chrome OS that can be installed on PCs and Macs. So this week, Microsoft released an optional preview for Windows 11 users on the stable channel. Now this will reach general availability in March, and some of the updates are coming through Windows Update and others through the Microsoft Store. Now, probably the biggest change here is a preview version of the Amazon App Store, which will allow users to run Android apps using the Windows subsystem for Android. Now, at the moment at least, this preview is only available to users in the US. And from what I've heard, that this app store doesn't really contain the best applications that you might want to run on Android. And there are also some other caveats that, for instance, the Windows subsystem for Android doesn't support Google Play services. So it's a little bit of an odd situation that we have here with this feature. To be honest, I don't see a lot of interest in it, especially from a corporate IT point of view, of course. Now, there is one exception to that. Possibly, and that's that developers might find this useful. If you're developing an app that doesn't rely on Google Play services, then potentially instead of using a slow emulator to test and debug your Android applications, you could now, of course, use the Windows subsystem for Android instead. Now, Microsoft has made available on its website some instructions about how you can go about connecting Visual Studio Code, for instance, to the Windows subsystem for Android and make that connection so that you can actually debug your applications. Although I don't see a lot of noise in the developer community about this particular feature, and I suspect that's because so many applications do actually rely on those Google Play services. Now, while this has been billed as the first major update for Windows 11, I would argue that that's not really the case, of course. This is not a feature update. These features are just coming as part of a cumulative update for everybody next month and through the Microsoft Store. And there are a few other minor changes in this update. So, for instance, there's now a mute and unmute button in the taskbar, and this basically saves you having to go and search for that button in the Teams interface. Now, at the moment, this only works with the enterprise version of Microsoft Teams, so it doesn't work with the chat Teams function that's built into Windows 11. Microsoft has said in the past that they're going to extend this feature to work with any application that can use a microphone, but at the moment this only works with Teams. We've also got the clock and date now appearing on secondary displays. There's a small weather widget that appears on the far left of the taskbar. And we've got an updated media player and a slightly updated notepad that you get through the Microsoft Store. So what's interesting is it looks like this update is basically coming as a cumulative update for everybody next month. And the question that I have, of course, is, well, what about enterprise? How do we stop these changes coming to enterprise users? And I think Microsoft outlined that well last month with all the different mechanisms that they can now use to deploy features outside of the yearly feature updates. What's not clear if these new features coming in March are going to be delivered using any of those mechanisms, or whether they're just going to be bundled in with the monthly cumulative update. And I expect that's what we will see happen next month. But going forwards, Microsoft is going to have to start using these other mechanisms so that enterprises can control whether users get these features separately, of course, from all the bug and security fixes that you get on the second Tuesday of every month. So providing that going forwards, Microsoft provides enterprises with some kind of control over when these new features are going to be deployed, then I don't really have a problem with any of this. I think that it's ridiculous, for instance, to force users to wait an entire year for very minor, what I would say, usability changes. And I think it's a great thing that we have at least the option to get these features out to people a little bit sooner, providing that we have control for the enterprise. But I think even more interesting than what's being tested now in the stable channel is the big update that dev channel users got, Windows insiders got this week. Now this includes a whole load of things which I think are much more relevant than the Windows subsystem for Android. So for instance here you've got things like start menu app folders, you've got changes to how you can snap windows with snap layouts. You can just now drag a window to the top of the screen which reveals the layouts and then drop that window onto a layout zone and have it snap. So that gives us another way to use snap layouts, which I think is great. There are new power management settings by default, the sleep and screen off settings, which should help to save power. There's a task manager redesign, and we've got the efficiency mode is now back in there, and that first previewed in insider builds last year. There's a PowerShell module to provision language and related settings. So I think that's another great thing for IT administrators, of course. Another really important thing, especially for power users, is this new build is going to have drag and drop support for the taskbar, which of course in the current stable version of Windows 11 is a regression from what we can do in Windows 10. So there are plenty of other things there as well. I've just called out the main new features in this build. The question is, when and how is all this stuff going to be delivered? This is a much bigger update than what we're going to see arrive next month. So are we going to have to wait until the first feature update in October, November of this year for Windows 11? I don't know. Are these features going to be pushed out via some other mechanism? I suspect that's probably the case, but Microsoft isn't saying right now. So you just have to watch this space to see how and when these features are going to arrive in the stable channel. And a couple of other interesting things before I move on. There's a new sharing experience between File Explorer and Outlook. If you install the Microsoft Office Outlook desktop integration app, that was a bit of a tongue twister, from the Microsoft Store. And this will give you a similar experience that you see, for instance, today in OneDrive, where you'll be able to share files directly into Outlook, even compose and write an email, send it without actually having to open the Outlook desktop application. And you'll be able to do that right from inside File Explorer. What I really want to know about all of this is, when are they actually going to improve File Explorer performance? Because they promised to do it. We all know that it's a bit sluggish. I want to see those performance issues, especially if you've got it connected to OneDrive, of course. They really need to be sorted out. In other news this week, Google is flexing its muscles and potentially threatening the dominance of Windows on the desktop by offering a free version of its Chrome OS operating system. So this is called Chrome Flex OS, and you're now able to install this on a PC or Mac. Now, because Chrome OS doesn't use a lot of system resources, this is something you can potentially install on older hardware as well, or you can even run it directly from a USB drive without actually ever having to install it. Now, Google is able to do this using technology called Cloud Ready that it bought from a company called Neverware in 2020. And this is going to allow the education sector and, of course, consumers to breathe life into old devices to install something that's usable, it isn't Linux, something that's usable onto those old devices. Now, this new version of Chrome OS uses exactly the same code base as the Chrome OS that you see on devices today. It's the same release version. I don't really think this is a threat to Windows. There's been a lot of commentary about this over the last few days. Of course, what really matters to Microsoft is really the enterprise market, and what they're offering with Windows 11, of course, is security, compatibility, and support for legacy applications. That's what's really important for enterprise. So while Windows 11 can't run on those old devices because of all the hardware limitations connected to the TPM chip and various other things connected to Windows 11, I don't think this is a huge threat nevertheless. But this is an interesting option for education and for consumers who do want to run something really simple on old hardware, and maybe they have hardware that doesn't meet those Windows 11 specs. Maybe they're running Windows 10 now. Previously they may have, I think I'm going to move to Linux or whatever, but now they have another option. If you found the video useful, then please give it a like to help more people see it on YouTube. And if you'd like to see more videos like this covering the news every week, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But that's it from me today, and I'll see you next time.